Well, good morning, church. As you're grabbing your seats this week, we're this week and looking at 1 Samuel chapter 8 before we pick up again with our Daniel study next week. But as we look at 1 Samuel 8, the reasoning behind that is obviously coming up this week. Friday is 4th of July, right? Which, some of you will play everybody's favorite game on 4th of July, which is, was that fireworks or gunfire? You don't know, depending on how the pop happens. And then we know statistically that there will be more fingers on more hands on Thursday than there will be by Saturday. Because fireworks-related injuries. All that to say this. Be careful, please, if you're going to do fireworks or do that kind of stuff. Please be careful this week and into this weekend. And don't make poor decisions. And just please be careful with all of that. But as I was thinking and praying and studying, especially when we were out this past week on vacation, I was thinking about July 4th and what does it mean, right? And for us as Americans, it's the time that we celebrate our independence, right? July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence, going into the Revolutionary War and America declaring its freedom from, as we would say, tyranny and persecution from the English and taxation without representation and all of that history stuff that we learned about or that you may remember. And then I think about, what is it that really caused the American colonists to want that independence from England? And one of the big things that pops up is taxation without representation, right? They were being taxed by England. They had no representation in the Parliament or in with the king, and so they didn't think that was fair. And so I thought back to what was that taxation. And you can go back and study all the different taxes there were. And does anybody know today the average tax rate for the average American? What is the average American paying in taxes today? Somewhere around 22 to about 30%. That's the average tax rate per person in this country. Do you know how much the tax rate was when we went to war? 0.5%. It equated to 0.5%. And that's what we went to war over. 0.5% in taxes. And we think about that for, really, they go back to taxation without representation. Now we have more taxation with representation. We think about why did we get to this point, right? What was God's, and we talked about this some in Sunday school if you were here. We go back, and a lot of times now we'll see, especially in this past week, because we did have the ability to watch some news while we were on the ship. I know some of you are going, you watch the news on the ship? There's very limited channels. So I'd wake up in the morning and, CBS while I'm getting ready would be on and watch the news. So we got to see that, of course, the Supreme Court finished their session, right? So they were getting a lot of cases out of the way here at the end. So they were talking about these cases that the Supreme Court were ruling on. And a lot of times they will say, well, we have to go back to the original intent of the framers of the Constitution, right? We've got to go back to the original intent of the writers. What were they thinking or what was going on when they wrote this? Which, again, I agree. I heard a comedian say this, that I think if the Founding Fathers today could look at us and go, you're still going off just that? Right? We wrote that with a feather. You needed to add some more along the way than you have, right? And things change over time. But we think about that with this, in that as we look at the original intent, I thought about, well, what was the original intent for us in God? Right? And the original intent for us in God was the garden. That we would walk with Him in the cool of the evening, that He would answer our questions, that we would be able to talk with Him. And the rules were pretty simple back then, weren't they? Right? For Adam and Eve in the garden, how many rules were there? 1. Right? Don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That was the rule. That was the one rule. Now you think about it now. If you could have a life where literally you just had one rule, would you choose that? I think most of us would say yes, right? If I could have a life where the one rule is, hey, don't eat the fruit off that tree, I think I could do that. Right? That was the original intent. That was God's original intent for us in creation in Him, was to have that kind of existence. But humanity chose to not follow that rule. And we have dealt with the consequences of that original sin in perpetuity. Until the time that Jesus returns, we will continue to live with the consequences of that original sin, including what we see here at 1 Samuel 8, which continues even into this day. Because once the original system wasn't going to work anymore, once we couldn't be in the garden, once we couldn't spend time with God directly like that anymore, then we moved to this new system, which we're going to see today that the Israelites couldn't even handle that. So we get to 1 Samuel 8 and it says this, "When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as judges over Israel. His firstborn son was named Joel, and his second Abijah, and they were judges in Beersheba. However, his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned toward dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice." And so we see this, that even here, Samuel set a standard. When he began to turn it over to his sons, they began to do things as they saw fit in their humanity. And we see there, at the end of verse 3, perverted justice. So they were doing wrong by the people. That those that are put in a position of leadership should do everything for the betterment of the people. And we look at the life of Samuel, and that's what he did. Samuel was the mouthpiece, right? God would deliver him a message. He would take that message to the people. But even Samuel was quick to admit that he was not God and he was not perfect. But then we get to Samuel's sons, and they turned towards dishonest gains, took bribes, perverted justice. And so you imagine what that does to the people. Samuel set a standard. His sons are not holding up to that standard. So we get to verse 4. "So all the elders of Israel gathered together and went to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, 'Look, you are old, and your sons do not follow your example. Therefore, appoint a king to judge us the same as all the other nations have.'" And so we pause and look right there, right? What is Israel asking for here? They're asking for a king. Why do they want this king? The end of verse 5 tells us why they want that king. What do they want? We want to be like everybody else. We want to be like the other nations around us. We as believers today need to not fall into this trap, because it's easy for us as Christians today to fall in the trap of, well, we want to appear to be like everyone else. If you are a Christ follower today, you are not to look like the world around you. You are to be different. You are to stand apart. Right? Not separate in that you are exclusive and that you are leading others not towards what you're doing, but we are to look different so that others would see us and say, what is it about you that makes you so different? What is it that you have that I don't, that I need? Because your life appears to be better than what I see in mine. Yet the Israelites here are looking at the other nations around them because of the lack of leadership from Samuel's sons. At the lack of leadership from Samuel's sons, they are looking at the other nations around them and saying, we'd rather be like them. Which when we look today, if we are not careful as believers today, folks look into the church and they say what? Well, why would I want to go there? Because they're no different than anybody else. The dreaded H word, right? We all become labeled hypocrites. Which, let's be honest, let's just own that right now. Every one of us in this room, hypocrite. Right? We all are. We're all guilty. So we see here, they ask for the king because they want to be like the other nations. Verse 6, when they said, "Give us a king to judge us," Samuel considered their demand sinful. So he prayed to the Lord, but the Lord told him, Listen to the people and everything they say to you. They have not rejected you, they have rejected me as their king. And they're doing the same thing to you that they've done to me, since the day I brought them out of Egypt until this day, abandoning me and worshiping other gods. Listen to them, but you must solemnly warn them and tell them about the rights of the king who will rule over them. And so we see here, it wasn't that they didn't have a king. Right? The nation had a king. Who was it? God. God was there. He wasn't walking with them in the cool of the evening, but he was there. He was their king. He wanted the people to come to him in their need and ask. Talk to him. Have relationship with him. But the people chose to be like the other nations around them. In the same way that we today, as believers, as modern believers, need to be very careful not to choose to look like the world around us. We need to make a choice not to look like the world, not to act like the world, not to be like the world, but to be different than the world. To understand that our God is the same today as He was then and will be forever. And He listens and He hears and He's gracious and He's merciful and He's all of those things. And that our hope is not in an elected official, it's not in a country, it's not in a political system, it's not in the belief in a country. Our hope is in God and Him alone. And we see what happens right after this, right? So God gives Samuel what to say to the people. And we see what happens in 10. Samuel told the Lord's words to all the people who were asking him for a king. He said, "These are the rights of the king who will rule over you. He can take your sons and put them to use in his chariots, on his horses, or running in front of his chariots," which if you don't know what that means, what does that mean? He can send them to war, to fight. Right? Verse 12, "He can appoint them for use as his commanders of thousands or commanders of 50s to plow his ground or to reap his harvest or to make his weapons of war or the equipment for his chariots. He can take your daughters to become perfumers, cooks, and bakers. He can take your best fields, vineyards, and olive orchards and give them to his servants. He can take 1/10 of your grain in your vineyards and give them to his officials and servants. He can take your male servants, your female servants, your best young men, and your donkeys and use them for his work. He can take 1/10 of your flocks, and you yourselves can become his servants. When that day comes, you will cry out because the king you've chosen for yourselves, but the Lord won't answer you on that day." Now, notice in this what God is saying through Samuel about what the king's going to do. Did you hear a single benefit to the people in this? I don't know about you. There's not a single thing that rolls through this that I'm like, sounds like a good deal. Right? This is like going to the car dealer or going to buy a house and the person just telling you, right? Like if you go to the car dealership to buy a car and that car dealer's like, "Yeah, you know the second you drive off the lot, you're going to lose 30% in value." Right? They don't say that to you because what does that cause you to do? To think about the fact that maybe I don't want to lose 30% of my money in less than a mile. Maybe I'll make a different choice. Right? They only talk to you about the pros of what you're doing. And here, I don't see a single thing that I would go, sounds like a good trade. Right? I'm willing to give up all of this to get this earthly king. There's no benefit here. Which for us as Christians, for me as a believer, when I was studying and marinating over this and thinking about it and just really kind of, ruminating over it in my mind. For us as believers today, the world offers us the same deal. Right? The world offers you things that if you really looked at it, don't provide you any real benefit. They don't provide you any true long-term benefit. It is merely short-term. It is merely things that you think you want because you think everybody else likes it. Right? I thought about that this week on our trip because one of the things, if you've ever gone, especially with the cruise line we cruise with, Carnival, one of the nights they serve frog legs. Which, the first time we ever sailed, I had never had them, but I was like, well, I need to try because I've never had it, right? And everybody tells me that they're good. They taste like chicken. No, they don't. They taste like frog. Right? Now, some of you here, you might like frog legs, and that's between you and you, right? But they're not for me. And I knew that the second I tried the first one, that they were not my thing. Right? I don't enjoy them. But I don't begrudge anyone who does. If you like them and you want to eat them, I'll give you mine. But I tried it and I knew I didn't like it. So I'm not going to sit there and eat it just because I think I'm supposed to like it. Right? I'm not going to do something just because someone else is doing it and I think I need to have it because, oh, well, everybody else likes it. Right? Much like snails. Same thing. They serve snails. I don't do that either. Right? All of you are like, we're having a fellowship meal in like a half hour. Really? Frog legs and snails? Escargot, yes, exactly. Which my mom's up here giggling because I know she eats those things. I don't. Right? And it's that. But I'm not going to pretend that I like it just because I want to look like somebody else, or I want to act like somebody else, or I want to fit in with the crowd. In the same way for us as believers, we don't need to look at the things of the world. We don't need to look at the leadership of the world and think, oh, well, I'm just going to like that because I think I'm supposed to, or because everybody else does. No. The person, the entity we need to look to for leadership is our God. Now, God allows humans in places of authority. Don't mess this up, or don't think I'm not understanding this. I understand that God has put people in positions of authority. No one gets put into an office without God allowing it to happen. No one. That doesn't mean that's the person He wants there. Sometimes people get put into places of authority because judgment is necessary. And so as we look, that I am not going to be beholden to a government for my salvation when that government can't do anything for my salvation. Ultimately, as Christians, our primary form of leadership should be our God. We should look to Him. Is it pleasing? Is it uplifting? Is it rooted in what He says and what He calls? And if that's the case, then I'm going to be for it. If it's not, then I'm not going to pretend that it's okay. Because I see here what God is saying about the king. There is no benefit to the people. Verse 19, even after this, 19, it says, the people refused to listen to Samuel. No, they said, we must have a king over us. Then we will be like all other nations. Our king will judge us, go out before us, and fight our battles. Even hearing all of this, the people still said what? We want to be like everybody else. As believers today, we are not called to be like everyone else. We are called clearly to be different. We are called to stand on a different principle. We are called to stand on what God has called us to do. We are called to stand on His grace and His mercy and seek to be like Him. We are not called to be like the world. We are not called to say that the end-all be-all for us is the leadership of this world, because it's not. We see what happens here at verse 20, that we'll be like all the other nations. Our king will judge us, go out before us, and fight our battles. Well, if you study the kings of Israel, much after Saul and David, not many of them go out and fight on behalf of the people. They sent the people to fight. Even today, we think about, going back to the Revolutionary War. What do we remember? The framing picture of the Revolutionary War is Washington doing what? Crossing the Delaware, right? Standing up on the boat with icebergs around him. Guess what? It didn't happen that way. Why do we see it that way? Because we won. Because the United States won, they got to paint what it looked like. If it had gone the other way, the picture would be of King George. And Washington and all of his compadres would have been rounded up and hung as traitors. When we look at this, that is the leadership of the world to a T. It's all about who can win. It's all about who can be better. The leadership of God tells us that we should be in service of others. The leadership of God tells me that I am not to be like the world, but to be like Jesus, to serve like Jesus served. And when Jesus served in His earthly ministries, He served people where they were. He met them where they were. He served them where they were at. And He didn't ask for glory and honor. He didn't ask for money and fame. He served people because they needed to be served. Verse 21, we see it, Samuel listened to all the people's words and then repeated them to the Lord. Listen to them. The Lord told Samuel, appoint king for them. And you read this, especially when, through my seminary career, we went back and looked at 1 Samuel in the Hebrew. And sometimes the ancient languages, if you don't know it, it's hard to go back and parse it out. We're not going to do that right now because you'll go to sleep. But when you go back and you read this in the Hebrew, one of the things I enjoy about the ancient languages, the Hebrew and the Greek, is you can get a lot of the context from how it's written. And when you go back and read this in the Hebrew, you can almost hear the hurt and the sadness in God saying, it would almost be framed for us as God saying, all right, they don't know better. Just give them what they want. Just let them have it. Like, he knows, obviously, he's omniscient. He knows how this is going to end. But he also knows that his creation sometimes has to learn a lesson the hard way. And God knows in this situation the only way they're going to learn is touching the stove. He knows how it's going to end. He knows it's going to end badly for them, but he allows them to have it anyway. The same thing for us today as believers. If you choose the world, at some point God's going to let you have your choice. Even though he knows it's going to hurt, even though he knows it's not going to do anything good for you, even though he knows it's not what you really, really need or even truly want, he's going to let you have your moment. But the good news is, much like with Israel, and we still see with us today, that even in the midst of that, we brought this up in Sunday school, that when it blows up, right? Because the human standard here would be different. I said this, and I said this repeatedly, that I thought about this as a parent. That if my children, and really not even my kids, the story I go back to, and I'm sad he's not here today, was my little brother, West. I know some of you are going, I've met him. He's not little. He's just younger than me. Right? We're about the same size. But I remember West when we were living in Bullard, and I don't know if he was even maybe 2. Is he about 2? You know what story I'm going towards, I hope. Okay? I think he was about 2. And West opened the fridge, and he saw what he thought to be a jar of pickles. They were not pickles. They were jalapenos. But you could not convince my 2-year-old brother that those were not pickles. He thought it was a jar of pickles, and he wanted a pickle. And I, at the time, I think 4th grader, could hear my mom reasoning with this 2-year-old, right? Hey, buddy, those aren't pickles. They're jalapenos. You're not going to like them. They're hot. It's not what you think it is. You don't want that. 2-year-old little brother screaming that he wants what? I want a pickle. Mother trying to reason with said child again. They're not pickles. This went on for a few minutes, and eventually I heard Mom say those magic words, which were what? Fine, have one. And you hear the jar. Now as a 4th grader boy, I've listened to this conversation. Now I'm much more involved because now I want to see what? I want to see what happens next. And so I hear the jar open, and I see West reach in and get his pickle, and I see it moving to his mouth, and it's like the movies, right? It's in slow motion, and the drop drips off the jalapeno and lands on the tongue, and at that point he's committed, so it goes in, and then it's almost like the cartoon, right? You almost see like the red start about belly and begin rising up to his throat. And I see him, and even as a 2-year-old, I'm watching my brother come to this realization of he asked for this, right? He chose this. And now he has a choice to make. Does he choose to react to the jalapeno like his body is telling him to react? Or does he do what most people will do, which is what? Good, not bad. I'll have another. No, he's still 2. He chose the other way. Screaming, running, complaining. Eventually to the point of looking at our mom like, why did you do this to me? And to the mom, my mom, and same thing I've said to my kids, and same thing you've probably said to your kids when they've made a situation or made a choice like this. Right? We see at the end of 22 where the Lord tells Samuel, appoint a king for them. The human side of that would add an extra statement at the end. Don't come crying to me when what? When it goes exactly like I tell you it's going to go. Don't come to me when it blows up in your face. The goodness of God is we don't see that statement there. Because even though He knows how it's going to end up, when the people need Him, what is He going to do? He's going to pick them up, He's going to dust them off, and He's going to say, what'd you learn? Now let's move forward. In the same way that in a situation with my brother, and I know I had similar situations, I'm just not going to tell a story on myself, she can tell you later. I know in that situation with my brother, there was a moment where mom kind of looked at him and said, I told you this was going to happen, and then instantly after that went into what? Mom mode. Hey, come here. Calm down, you're going to be okay. Drink some milk, you'll be all right. Let's not do that again. Now he eats that stuff all the time, like he loves it. But we think about for us. I think about for myself. How often do I look at things and go, I think I want that. And God tells me what? You really don't, buddy. It's not good for you. It's not going to end well. You really don't. And in my similar 2-year-old self, I say what? Nah, I think I'm smarter than you. I think I do. And then eventually God says what? All right, good luck. Right? He didn't say good luck, but go ahead. See how it ends for you. Right? But when it does go the way He knows it's going to go, He's still such a gracious and loving God that He says what? Hey buddy, you okay? What did we learn? Let's not make that mistake again. The same thing for us as believers today. We should not be looking to humans for our ultimate guide and leadership. We should be looking to the one who created leadership, to the one who has been creator, to the one that has been leader since the beginning and for all time. If we continue the end of 22, it says, Samuel tells the men of Israel, each of you go back to your city. We know very quickly after this, Saul becomes king. And if you continue in studying this, you know how quickly it goes bad. The good news is even after that, like we've said, even in the midst of all of this going on with Israel, God still takes care of His people. The same thing for us today, that as we look to July 4th, as we look to celebrating American independence, that we would understand that the only reason we have any of this is because God has allowed us to have it. That our true and full leader is Him and Him alone. So I'm not saying don't enjoy your July 4th. I'm not saying don't enjoy your time off. But give praise to the one who's worthy of praise. Let us not praise and worship earthly leadership anymore. Let us seek to serve the one who is a true leader. We'll pause here as we end today. Pray with me, church. God, we thank You for today. God, we thank You for Your true and righteous leadership. I pray that as we come to this July 4th holiday, that we would seek Your leadership. That we would seek Your wisdom and Your guidance. That we would not choose to be like the world. That we would choose to be different because You have called us to be different. That we would stand apart. That we would hold true to Your precepts, to Your knowledge, to Your wisdom, to Your leadership. That the world would look at us and say, I need what You have. And then we would be quick to tell them that the thing that makes us different is You, and that's it. And that we would serve You with everything that we have. It's in Your precious and holy name we pray. Amen.